So we have a few more things to share and do for the rest of the day, but also it can be interactive. If you have ideas, thoughts, questions, we can also take a few different directions. Just to give you an idea, we will talk and discuss and do a few more things for about an hour or a little more than that. And after that, those of you who have learned Om technique already will be with me in this room. We will talk a little bit about, I'm not going to teach the technique, but just if you have questions, we can discuss also just re-inspiring your practice, how to place it, how to go deeper with it. We will have a discussion around that. And then those who have not will be doing some yoga with Maitri in the other room. And then after that, we'll energize and have a slightly longer sadhana towards the end of the evening. Then we'll also practice Om technique for those of you that have learned it already. So before I start, I was curious to sort of hear whether you have learned the Om technique or not. I know at this point we have mentioned it a few different times. Just when you meditated through those experiences, is there anything that you felt, or it could also be from your meditations before, not necessarily today, with the inner sounds, especially for those of you that may not have learned or practiced the technique before? How did it feel? Were you able to hear anything when we were able to tune into the inner sounds?
All I heard was a ringing in my ear. That was it.
I always get lights. I just keep on seeing lights at the eye center. But I don't hear anything.
You didn't hear anything. That's okay. Anyone else?
I hear quite a few sounds. All different pitches. And then I have one that wavers between two notes.
Sure. You know, oftentimes I know, I cannot speak from experience, but I know for a lot of people there's also a physical condition called tinnitus. And then there's the sound of Om, since I know you've made a reference to it. It's, from what I've heard or understood from others who have had a similar situation, it is possible to tell it apart. And one of the ways you can tell when you hear any inner sound, it's not just for those with tinnitus. For anybody who's wondering, am I hearing something? Whether or not you're doing the technique, whether I am in fact tuning into the sound of Om, there are a few things to watch out for. When we hear any inner sound, if it is actually a sound coming from the astral spine, it certainly has a quality that is both stilling and inviting. You feel a certain, when you pay attention to it, when you listen to it, you feel particularly still. And it also has a very inviting quality. What I mean by that is when you start focusing and hearing it, it becomes deeper. It sort of draws you in. It becomes more dynamic. It's like interacting with a conscious force. Whereas with tinnitus, you could be driving your car, or it's sort of like the background of your life that does not really shift or change and doesn't have any particular quality to it. So I have noticed, I've heard that oftentimes people who have the condition comes with old age, but also anybody young can also have it. They can't tell it apart. The other interesting thing, Swami Hriman, who was the Kriyacharya for many years, I remember being in a Kriya review with him, and somebody asked him, he was telling about himself. He said, I've had tinnitus for the last 15 years. And, and then he went on to say, as if, you would think, oh my gosh, how do you practice Om technique or other Kriya techniques where you listen to the sounds? And he said, so I'm very lucky. So I have always some sound to focus on.
That's what I did. I just focused on it.
And yeah, exactly. It sounds a little silly, but just coming to the practice of some of the things we are talking about, listening to Om is just that. The emphasis is on the first part of the phrase, listening. The second part of the phrase almost becomes incidental or sometimes even irrelevant as long as we are listening. So even in meditation, I'm not just talking about Om technique, but because we are discussing this topic today, it is all about the space that we are in, how we are approaching it, and how we are able to hold ourselves during that practice, that part of the technique. And whether we have lights, whether we hear sounds, whether we actually hear the thunder of Om or the bumblebee, whatever harp, all of that is almost secondary or incidental in a way. All of that's very helpful. They're sort of guideposts or mile markers sometimes that you see on the road. When you see it's helpful. If not, you have your GPS. So it's comforting sometimes, and there's these experiences are sometimes given to us in order for us to also just go into them and receive and learn through them. But the same thing can happen even when it is not given to us. We can still receive and learn and grow through the presence or absence of whatever experience it is. So if anything, the one aspect with Om and tying back to meditation and just spiritual life in general, it is all about listening. It is about listening, because even to imagine Om as the Divine Mother, what is the mother? What is that nourishing quality of God? It's that presence, it's that compassion. Maybe some of you have had children of your own. When you comfort your child, it is not a conversation. You hold your child on your lap, you feed your child, you nourish your child. The child receives so much, and it is just that presence and that, it's the mother envelopes. In the Bible, these ideas are not directly connected in the Christian Bible, but Yogananda explained it this way. When Jesus Christ was going to be crucified, he tells his disciples, I'm going to send the Comforter. And Yogananda explained that by saying the Comforter that he was talking about is the Holy Ghost. Again, in the Christian theology, it is interpreted in many different ways. There's a Christian Trinity, which is Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Father is the Spirit that is beyond creation, as we were talking this morning, that perfect stillness of consciousness itself. And the Son is the reflection. The Son is the Christ consciousness, not Jesus the man, who was one with the Christ consciousness. But in the Trinity, the Son is referring to that doorway that is present in each one of us, not just each one of us, as I was saying in the morning, in every particle of creation. And then there's the Holy Ghost, because it is not just the Spirit and the reflection, but the vibration that surrounds it that actually makes it manifest. So the form for the Son is through the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost is the Comforter. And the sound of Amen, the word, is the Holy Ghost. That's what I was saying. The Christian Bible does not make these connections obvious or necessarily easy to understand, but as Yogananda explained it, that Holy Ghost is what the Genesis refers to as the Word. And when Jesus was talking about the Comforter being sent, it is that presence of that nourishment, of compassion. All of that was coming to the disciples through that Holy Ghost. And it raises another interesting question and thought also, which is the Holy Ghost had to come to the disciples through Jesus. And that, again, if you're not into Christian, if you're not familiar with these teachings, it doesn't matter, but the concepts are still important, because the Om vibration, our receptivity to it, comes through the Guru. I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not you're disciples of Yogananda, you have a guru, that's not what I'm talking about. But this attunement, it's listening. It's not listening. In a way, it is listening to everything that the universe is trying to tell us. It's listening to all that is around. But also, when we become focused on God realization, when we become focused on being and wanting to go spiritually, then you also have to choose who are you going to listen to. Are you going to just listen to the constant chatter in your head, or are you going to listen to somebody who knows better? And that's where that relationship with the Guru also comes in. I'm sharing that because even as we are listening for that guidance as to tune in, we want to invite God's presence. If you are disciples of a Guru, of Yogananda, certainly do it through that Guru. And if not, it doesn't matter. Pray to Divine Mother. If you have a connection with Jesus, then tune into Jesus as somebody who can reveal that vibration to you. Tune into God in whatever form He appeals to you so that you can grow deeper with it. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I have a few things to share, and we'll try a couple of things together. Anything else that people... Yes, multiple hands. Mallory, why don't you go first?
When I was outside, there were sounds in my head and there were sounds out there. I do have sound. Right now I have some sounds in my head. When I attempt to switch it to the right side, it takes a while, but it's much fainter. It's not like a big boom.
It's a common experience, and from whatever little I can speak of from my experience, it does, even if it's faint, the more we focus, the more we tune into it, it becomes brighter, it becomes more dynamic, it becomes more accessible. It feels like you are getting closer to it. And the inner and the outer sounds are almost, they can coexist, but depending on what you focus, again, we were talking about in the morning, the flow of life force in the spine. The life force can be directed towards the senses or back into the spine. And both those realities are consistently happening all the time. So the moment we focus on the inner sounds, immediately the life force is drawn back into the spine. The moment we focus on outer sounds, it's not a bad thing. It can be God reminding. That sound, the life force is drawn towards the senses. And then you can still use your mind to positively direct that influence and then bring it back inside. But that's how the life force works. The more we focus on the outside, it is drawn out of the spine. The more we listen to the inner sounds, the energy naturally flows into the spine. Karen, what are you going to say?
My question was just, I don't think I've ever heard why the right side, you may have already covered that.
I did not. Well, I have some theories, but I don't want to. These are things where, like people, we can all have theories, but we are also talking about things that are sometimes beyond rational comprehension, or I should say beyond the comprehension of our little awareness. Even the mudra or things that we practice with the Om technique. It has to do with the flow of energy. How the Ida and the Pingala channels flow between the throat chakra and the spiritual eye, but it also has to do with the right side of the body. That's what I've been told. And I've been told, oftentimes people ask questions like, I'm left-handed, should I still be listening to the right ear? And I've been told again, you always listen in the right ear. And go ahead, Mike, you have a better answer.
I did want to mention about that what we're listening to last Tuesday and then this Tuesday in our Treasures Along the Path is about the sound of God. 11:30 on Tuesday if somebody wants to join our Zoom. And Swami in those 13 minutes talked about that the right part of the brain is where there's mystical experiences, and that's neurologically been determined.
Well, thank you for sharing. I did not know that. I did not listen to the talk. At the end of the day, I think some of these explanations can be helpful, and some things are beyond our understanding anyway. That's why we need a guru.
On that same lines, just a question I've heard, and I thought it was of these teachings. Is it true in the Hindu world that diksha from other gurus or spiritual teachers, if they're going to give someone a mantra or a blessing,
it's always right ear.
That it's always the right ear?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, it's more than just the ear. Even like for those of us in India, it's just like we would never, it's sort of ingrained in our culture, we would never touch food with our left hand. We would never, if somebody like, even in toll booth, like I would be going like this to give money, or you would never give with your left hand. So there's so many things. You always walk into a space with your right foot first, especially in temples. It's more than, it is, I mean, these things, they're not just a belief. I'm not saying we need to do all of these things, but it's sort of ingrained in the culture, and it's not superstition or just a matter of belief. I think there is an energetic reality to it. You always put right forward, and all positive transactions happen through the right. And I think the right side affirms the positive flow of energy in the spine, especially in the higher chakras, and the left side sometimes can do the opposite. So that's why I think it is presented that way. One of the things that I wanted to do, maybe let's do this first. I've been talking a lot since morning. I'm going to take a seat. I know we are set up in a certain way, or we can be in a circle, but I would love for some sharing this afternoon, not necessarily just about Om or the principles that we have been talking about in the morning, but more on a very practical note of how we feel. I was inspired to ask this question based on some conversations Atul and I had just over lunch, of just what are those times when you have been lifted up by God or by the Guru, where you have felt the hand of grace stoop in and help you. And I thought it'll be inspiring for us, if anybody, it's not a compulsion, you don't have to, just briefly wanted to share instances from their life, small, big, where you have felt that comfort, that nourishment, protection, something that you know was beyond just the doing of your mind or a coincidence, but something that you know to be from a higher place. And I'll start just to sort of prime the pump and just share a story that's almost inane, but a story that's so vivid in my mind because I knew this was an experience for me personally. I used to, not anymore since my wife is not a fan of it. I used to go camping a lot and when I was single. And where I live in California, there are a lot of opportunities to do that. And I often take those times almost as a personal seclusion. I don't talk. I'm in silence for 3 or 4 days. Generally, I like to carry my own food for 3 days. I just don't shop or anything. And I was going and I had all the food packed and I realized I want to have one last stop and eat something and not take the food that I had packed. So, I went to Chipotle or someplace like that. This was in Eureka. It was a small town in Northern California. And I ordered a bowl and I ate. And when I was done, he gave me a bunch of napkins, the guy. when I took my bowl. Generally, you go and pick the napkins from somewhere else. I'm like, why are you giving me napkins? I don't need so many. I don't want to waste so much paper. And I was already in silence. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to take these napkins, put it in my bag. And, I didn't want to throw it away. And I didn't pick these napkins. They came along with me on my trip. Anyway, this is going to sound, I'm building up to a lot, but it's a very silly story. But anyway, 3 days of camping, it was raining and it was beautiful. I had such a great time. I felt like it was my time with Divine Mother. It was just all perfect and beautiful. And the third day, I take my tent. I'm trying to pack everything back up. And the last night it had rained and this campsite was pretty muddy. And I realized the bottom of my tent is just full of just dirt and it's wet and clay and just a lot of stuff. And now I have to go to work tomorrow morning. I need to pack this tent. I don't have time. I don't know how I'm going to put it in my clean car. And I'm thinking, and then I open my car trunk and there are these napkins from Chipotle. Anyway, I put the whole tent on the top of my car and then I start cleaning with those napkins. And, I had been in silence. I was sort of in a very elevated state just for those 3 days, being in nature and being alone. And it was more than a coincidence in my mind. I was done with every speck that was left on the bottom of my tent, and that was exactly the amount of napkin that he had dropped into my bag. And I was just so happy that it happened. Anyway, now you get the point. It could be a big experience, something where you felt protected and helped in a significant way, or something just small ways in which you felt God's presence in your life. Just, that somebody's watching, somebody's caring, somebody's there with you. Shraddha wants to go.
So we were talking earlier, I heard about how our house took a long time to build, and the whole spectacle. Well, before we poured the foundation, my parents are Hindu, so I had done this blessing of the house before the pad got poured, and it was just a very special moment. Patrick was flying, so I did it by myself, and the builder that ended up stealing a lot of money, he was there during that. He was like, I was like, Brian, you don't have to stay. Like, this is probably going to take a while. You can leave. And he was like, no, I'm not going to leave you out here. Because at the time, it wasn't really a full neighborhood yet. And our house was, like, kind of in the middle of nowhere in the neighborhood. So we stayed, and I did this whole ceremony that my mom told me how to do. So fast forward years later, we finally move in. And I'm like, hey, man, I'm here. We've only been in there for a year and a half now, right? Yeah, year and a half. And so we had 2 experiences where my mind was blown. So one of them, and I don't know sequentially what happened first, but there was a huge storm, and our house is a little bit on a hill, and lightning struck, and it struck Patrick was home, and I was at work, and he was like, he never gets rattled, and he was like, I jumped, like it was a loud bang, and I was like, oh my gosh, did the house get hit? It was that loud. Well, a bunch of our stuff went out, like a couple of, the fire sticks we use to watch streaming shows and stuff. A couple of those burnt out.
Wow.
What's it called? The electrical outlet in our
TFCI's blew.
Yeah, like blew up in the house.
Doorbell went out, security was
Oh yeah, our doorbell went out, so random stuff all over our house like blew up. Our house is fine. And I was like, oh my goodness, like if that wasn't God, we were protecting our home, you know? And then maybe like a month or two later, it's Christmas time. So we're like, oh my gosh, we've been saving, we can finally do Christmas lights. So we pay this guy that had been working at other homes in the neighborhood to put up our lights, and he did it, but 2 weeks later, the house almost blew up again. We have sockets, you can explain that part.
We have soffit electricity, right? So you can plug multiple strings in. Well, he put everything through one string, so it way overloaded the circuit and it actually melted right there.
Wow.
So he asked us, do you want this on the rooftop, like over here, or do you want it on the front door, like porch? And I was like, oh, well, there's a battery, maybe it's easier, so I can change the timing of it if it's down here, if we want it lit up more, whatever. So, again, by the grace of God, I said to put it right here. The whole thing blew up again. He was gone. I come home, and I'm like, oh, the lights aren't on. And I go out to the front porch, and it's like I've never seen anything like it. And my parents had come to visit. I think they just got there that day, and I was like, oh, they get to see our lights. They did not get to see the lights, but they saw this thing. But anyway, I was just, again, like, oh my goodness. Like, if that's not God and Guru constantly protecting our home. And we had our handyman doing something one day, and he was like, your house could have blown up. I'm like, I know. It's crazy.
Wow.
But it was like back-to-back two things, and I immediately thought, like, thank you, God, thank you, Guru, like, just thank you so much, because I knew that was that protection, and I thought, you know, they're always there, and they're always protecting us, and I thought about the, you know, ceremony I did, and just, like, putting that energy into our home, like, that's where we live. I mean, we could absolutely live somewhere else and be without that home, that it's just where we happen to live now, but the fact that we're, like, always in this protected space, no matter where we go, like, it's just so comforting.
Thank you for sharing. It's beautiful.
Okay, I will share.
Yes.
No, go ahead. Okay. So when I go to work at an airport, and a lot of people are not particularly happy with my company, not particularly happy with, or like just, I think people are out of sorts. It's a lot of energy coming at me, so sometimes I kind of standoffish and whatever. But a couple of weeks ago, at the end of the flight, I get up in the doorway and I was saying goodbye to everyone. And instead of just like not really saying, I told myself I'm going to say like blessing and ask Divine Mother to bless every single person that comes by. And it was the most amazing thing where like I quit thinking about me completely, and I just felt this love and sweetness as everyone got off and made this little connection. And I texted her and I was like, wow. That was just Guru working through. It wasn't me. It was just so beautiful to see like just a glimpse of what's possible, you know. And I got that, and from being a negative, oh, I gotta say goodbye to people, to like, oh my God, what a treat that I got to say goodbye and have this little connection.
Are you a pilot?
I am, yes.
Tell them who you work for.
Southwest Airlines.
Oh, great. I had a great experience flying in.
I'm a clever American. Usually you're like, oh.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in my case, I was doing engineering,
Uh-huh.
and you know how we go to the hostels and do the study in
Yes.
last moments, you know, finishing up the submissions, and I was doing that. Maybe I slept around 1 or, you know, in the night after coming from the hostel. Actually, we slept in the hostel, and I came back around 5, and I wanted to study again. I didn't want to sleep back, but all of a sudden I was feeling so sleepy. And so I went to sleep, and I got a vision of like a totally white-clad, like person, you know, the sadhu, saint, one of the, and I don't know who exactly. And it was like a blessing, and I was going through so much rough patch, and it was like I will be taken care of. And so no matter what I went through, I could feel that, you know, I was always like I sailed, and you know, I made academically I did good, and so other things kind of went in back ground. But the recent experience is what my daughter was going through in February, March. A week before I will get in my inner consciousness somewhere, I was getting a glimpse of what I'm going to see. And I was getting to see that. That is what happened twice. And when some bad incident happened, I had no clue what to do. And the neighbor just happens to come in and just, I get the, oh, you take her here, oh, you take her there. And it was all sorted out. And mentally, I felt like so much support. I didn't feel like I didn't get carried away with what was happened.
Beautiful.
It was just uplifted, I mean, taken out whatever pain. And I just, did so good, but it wasn't me actually.
Yeah. Anyone else wants to share? Please.
So, I'm standing up so good. This was years ago, and it was the end of my first year that I lived in another village, and my parents and all my grandmother and my aunt, and they decided they wanted to go to Europe, and I was going to go to Europe. Well, I'd been pretty sort of monk-like that year at Anonymous. This is my first trip out into the world again in that sense. I was really concerned because my family pushes my buttons like nobody else. So anyway, we went out and we were in Europe, and I was like, okay, I'm doing my practice, I'm breathing, I'm going to these, find any nook and cranny I could go to meditate in and keep my center in the midst of it. But I lasted maybe 5 days. And we went to London, and there was this hotel we went in, which looked nice on the outside, but when you got inside, it wasn't all that nice. And I was in this, I was sharing the room with my aunt, and I have this thing that my whole life, it really bothers, TV bothers me just to listen to the TV all the time. And, we get in the room, and I'm just exhausted, and I'm really not holding it together very well anymore. And my aunt turns on the TV, and it's just blaring. And that was just oh God, I laid on my little cot-like bed, because that's what it seemed like. I put my hands over my eyes like this, and I just silently was just sobbing, because I was like, this is, everything I've gained is lost. I'm just dissolving here in the midst of family dramatics and, my own. And I realized, and I didn't move because my mom and my aunt were talking over here, and I thought, I can't get up yet. And my mom left the room, and I saw a little, getaway into the bathroom where I could really sob. So I went up to the bathroom, and I turned on the water so I could sob louder. And I'm like, oh, where are you? Yeah, that's the way I am. I'm sort of Sarah Hartburn kind of. and so I was just really sobbing. And then I heard my aunt, and she said, Linda was my name. Linda, you got to come out here. You got to come see this. You got to come see this. Well, even though I don't like the television, my field was video. So, it's a funny kind of duality, right? And I think it's so sweet how Divine Mother has such a great sense of humor and is very individual. Just knows exactly, right? And so I came out there, and on the TV screen was this, all these people standing in a circle, and they were in a carnival. This was like there was a Ferris wheel, you could see, and they were all holding hands, and they were singing my favorite hymn from my childhood, which is, be still my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief and pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide, and everything he faithful will remain. And so that's going on. And then in the background is this neon sign that is flashing, joy, joy, joy. I could not make this up. This happened. And I immediately stopped because I knew.
Yeah.
It's okay, all right.
Oh, that's quite a story.
I still to this day, I have to always bring that one back to.
Oh, beautiful. Anyone else wants to share?
Well, mine's so mundane after that. Mine is I'm needing a rubber band in my kitchen, right? I'm cleaning the countertops, and I can't remember why I needed the rubber band, but it seemed important at the moment, right? And I'm looking in a drawer where I throw paper clips and rubber bands and bread ties, right? One of those drawers in the kitchen.
Yes.
And I cannot find this rubber band. So I think, okay, guess I don't need to. So I finish wiping the countertop, and on my last swipe, a rubber band comes. And it was left over from flowers that I had bought a day or two or three before. You know how they have rubber bands, and it must have somehow got there. Wow. And I'm saying, and I brought God into it. I mean, why not? I say, why can't I fit? Not very calmly. I just need a rubber band. Something so simple. Yeah, I know you take care of the big stuff, but could you take care of the rubber band? And all of a sudden, here's the rubber band. Yeah, I mean, it's even the simple little things like that.
Yeah.
And the big stuff.
Yeah.
It made me laugh and pause.
I can share one. When my mom died, I got all of her stuff, and one of the things I received was a bracelet that my grandpa had made specially for her 21st birthday. So it was very special to Mom when I was growing up, and very special to me. Well, I was wearing it for a while, and one day I worn it, and I'd taken it off because it was a little loose. It didn't have a good clasp on it. And I didn't think anything more about it, and a few days later I thought, oh, I'm going to wear my bracelet again. So I went to the place where it was supposed to be, and Mom's bracelet wasn't there, and I went, oh, God. I mean, this was something really precious, to me. And I started thinking, okay, first, I didn't panic at first. I went, I'll remember where I put it. I looked in my handbag, and I looked in a few other things, and I called my niece because my niece was with me that day, and I said, Kristen, do you know what I did with Mom's bracelet? And she said, I don't remember you taking it off. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. But she looked in her car, thinking maybe it dropped out there. Couldn't find it for months and months and months, and I got really angry at myself, and, really, I said very bad things about myself, worse than I've ever said about anyone else, because I thought, I lost something that was really special. It was during World War II. She was serving as a land girl for 4 years, and, this was for her 21st birthday. And so I got so angry. Anyway, to make a long story short, a few more months went by, and I happened to be cleaning out, and I thought, I've got to clean some junk out of my closet and stuff. And I was going through boxes, and some stuff was hanging in the back, and I pulled a bunch of shirts that I had, and I was sorting them out. And I picked up one shirt, and it felt a little heavy. I thought, well, what did I have in there? Well, lo and behold, Mom's bracelet was in there. And I went, I didn't even remember putting it in the pocket. I don't even remember wearing the shirt, to tell you the truth. I was like, and just because I was, it was months. It was probably 6-7 months. And all of a sudden it just showed up in the shirt. And then Kristen, my niece, said, oh, yeah, I remember you wearing that, Auntie. And I said, I did. And she said, yeah, you were using because you were cold. I went, oh, okay, yeah, all right, whatever. But, so I did a whole lot of thank yous. It was like, thank you, God, thank you, thank you, thank you. Mom, I found it. I picked up a picture, and I said, see, I found it, Mom. I don't have to apologize anymore. I'm sorry. But, that just really struck me. I went, wow, if I hadn't been doing that, who knows? And it was just funny that because I'm not one to clean stuff like that, that I was inspired to even do that kind of activity. But I was, and that was the reason.
Yeah. And often also just that, God, Divine Mother, plays with us and waits for us to be in the right state of mind, sometimes before she can speak, or sometimes she just has to bring us to the right state of mind. Anyone else wants to share anything? Before we? Yes, please, Sonia.
I have a couple, but I'm going to choose the short one. Okay. When I married, my first marriage, I was living in Spain, in Mallorca, which is an island, and I lost my marriage ring.
Huh.
One time in a very, very small beach, like, let's say 150 meters
Uh-huh.
wide. Okay, I went there with two friends, and when I got home, I realized that I lost my ring. And I told my ex-husband, I said, you know what happened? I lost my ring. And he goes, yeah, this is because you don't love me. We had an argument. And the next day, I went there again at the sunset. And it was very special because there were not many people, maybe 4 people. And I looked back and I was asking everyone, did you find a golden ring? It's my marriage ring. And I was kind of desperate, you know. And then a blonde, I remember very well, a young man, blonde hair. It was like a, how to say, a cupido.
You, a cherub Cupid.
Yeah. Or an angel, you know. He came this side, and I said, yeah, I lost my marriage ring. And he, very, very calm, he said, it's about love. It's not about something material. And I don't know, that was kind of, you know, it resonates with me.
Beautiful.
He left. I found that moment. I found it
Wow.
on the shore.
Wow.
And I turn around, as I turn around to say, hey, I found it. He disappeared. Yeah, that was something.
Oh my gosh.
That was something else. But anyway, I got divorced after my. Oh yes, it's about love.
Did you lose the ring after you divorced him?
Yeah, that was something.
Oh wow. Go ahead, Hugh.
Well, just talking about my tree, like she was saying how my mother becomes individual as you develop a relationship, and a lot of us here in Ananda, we're devotees of Divine Mother before we even got in the path. So you have a relationship with her in whatever manifestation. And if you don't know me, I'm suspicious about new technology. I don't know why. I'm at the end of the baby boom generation, maybe going through all those black and white movies of atom bomb attacks and how to protect yourself.
Get under the desk.
Yep. Under the desk.
Under the desk.
Or if you follow Asha, there could be more metaphysical reasons, you know, like past lives in Atlantis or something. But I'm really suspicious of new technology. I just want to, you know, all I have is WhatsApp to keep up with my friends. Good advice. I work as a teacher, and a few years ago, before the pandemic, you know, surprisingly, Plano ISD still uses Windows in their technology, and although they were rolling out Google Suites, well, right in 2019, that spring, when we went online, all of a sudden it's like, all right, you've got to use Google Classroom because that's how we're going to teach. No longer we teach. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, I don't even know Google. How do you get on Google? Like, how do you get to Google Drive? And so they give you all these sheets and you follow the steps, but I was really, really resistant, you know. And so I had read, something not to teach and saying the ministers, you have a problem, you have something confront you, just take a step back and call Divine Mother, and she will help you out no matter what. And so I took it to heart, and I'm over there at home, I turn the computer off and turn the lights on, and I think of some Sanskrit mantras, like stuff like Jai 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 Jagadam Vibhavani, Mother of the Universe, Divine Mother, and started going through this whole routine, and then I just sit there in silence and do a few ohms, and then you open your eyes, and it's like magic. It's like, all right, that's it? It's that easy? And so, this progresses, then a couple of years ago after the pandemic, the state decided to roll out this whole new reading online testing suite or platform called M-Class. And so, one more time, oh my gosh, what? I got to put all my students in there, and then I've got to, I mean, you won't believe the number of steps you have to go through it, and like, I freeze up. But I've done this so many times now, you know, that I forget my mantra. I don't even go through mantras. I just close my eyes there, and I'm just, all right, Divine Mother, this is your joint, this is your gig. Let me have it. Let me have it. And, you know, I do sit in silence for a little bit, and I'll open my eyes, and it's all there.
Wow.
So, all right, that's all there's to it, you know, and I don't have to go through that whole big routine of doing all the 10 mantras in silence for 10 minutes. It's just a matter of stilling the mind. You know, like Master says, when the mind is still, you're in the kingdom of the infinite. And so sometimes it's just a matter of realizing, touching base with the true reality, right? Divine Mother, she knows everything. She created everything. She created this universe. Surely she knows how to get me on M-Class and get rolling. She does. You know?
Beautiful.
So beautiful.
It's so inspiring. Anyone else?
I got a real easy, simple one. I met an old friend from work because we were at a luncheon thing down the road here. And we started sharing about our past a little bit. And I said, oh, my parents, they were really, really nice to me. And then I realized, I always had a problem with one of my parents, but that's what my truth is now.
Sometimes it's just an idea or a realization. It's not necessarily. That's the miracle in itself. I want to share a song with all of you. It's one of my favorites of Swami Kriyananda. It's called Mother of Us All. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and the words are just exquisite. All your children, Mother, call you, knowing not it's you they call. Some through mists of their unknowing, bruised and hurting when they fall, turn away, but who can leave you? You, the mother of us all. If the child forgets its mother, will she coldly turn away? Wise or foolish, we're your children. Guide us, Mother, if we stray. Those whose hearts are torn with anguish lack the power your name to call. Heal their wounds, Ma, soothe their sorrows. You, the mother of us all. Heal their wounds, Ma, soothe their sorrows. You, the mother of us all. It is always inspiring to hear all the ways in which we feel and know the presence of God in our lives, and also just so impressive to think about how easy it is to get distracted, to get drawn away, and to not be aware of that. And it's just that beautiful interplay that we have been coming back to through all our discussions this morning and right now, of just how much do we feel the presence of God in our lives, how closely we feel connected, and yet we do get lost often, whether it is, in whatever ways in which we still have unlearned lessons. We just forget still that we are loved, we are protected, and what is actually going to make us happy, what is it that we are really doing here, what it is that we are seeking. It gets confusing at times, and we are talking about Om here, but really what we are talking about is going within. You could easily substitute that as a synonym for all the discussions that we have been having today, because all that we practice on the path of Kriya Yoga, what meditation is, the act of listening to the Om sound or tuning into the cosmic vibration, is just reminding ourselves, this is the truth. Our whole life is a backdrop. It's a canvas where a lot of things are unfolding, but the only painting that is happening here is our own spiritual growth. Everything else is incidental. All of this was just provided as this context where we can grow, and we pick the exact right context. We incarnate in India, in US, in Africa, wherever it is that we are born, and then we have our lives, we have a job, our marriages, and this and that, and all of that happens, but there's only one thing that's happening, which is that Divine Mother is constantly calling us back, and she makes herself present, felt all the time in our lives. And then when you wake up one morning, you realize, what else was I doing? What else was worth doing in life except just to listen to this call? Not that we have to quit our jobs or move away from our families, none of those things, but even in all of those opportunities, just to always look for Divine Mother's hand, to always feel that presence. I want to share just a few things. I was thinking about this today morning, and I want to write this out because it's helpful to see it visually. If we were to have a roadmap, which is what the entire spiritual path is, which is what the Yoga Sutras are, which is what the Bhagavad Gita provides us, which is what Master came to present to all of us, we want to think of it as this journey inward, and for our own, to draw our own way back into that vibration, to always have access to it. The first and foremost step is awareness. By awareness, I think if we are in this room, and if you chose to spend your Saturday this way, perhaps we all are aware on that some level, and especially with everything that everyone has been sharing so far, we are very well aware. We are aware of so many things, in theory. I mean, there's still realization and living it, that's a whole other aspect to it, but we are all aware of why we are here. We are here to expand our consciousness. We are here to grow closer to God. We are here to, and we also know, we are aware that that's what is going to take us to that state of perfect happiness, bliss, that inner peace that we are constantly seeking in our lives. We have that awareness. And once we have that, the second step is remembrance. And here is where, step after step, there is a little more trick that Maya plays on us to constantly keep reminding ourselves. I truly was inspired by everything. It was just something that came up, and I was thinking about it during our lunchtime, and I'm glad I had that inspiration. But it is important for us not just right in this moment, but also constantly keep reminding ourselves in our life, just as the story that Patrick was saying, at times when we need it. When we don't find ourselves, the spiritual path is very simple. It's not 100 different routes going in many different directions. It's just two. It's here or here. And that's all there is that's happening in our consciousness. It's polarized. Either we are constantly making choices. Either it is towards the light or away from it. There's nothing more to it. It feels like we are making a lot of choices. Are we having Tex-Mex? Are we going to this restaurant? Are we going to... Life presents there's the material plane has an infinite variety in which it confuses us, and we just navigate it to the best of our abilities. But really, the only choice we are always making, and so many choices we don't make, we even think we make. Oftentimes we find ourselves, did I actually choose this career? Did I actually choose to be with this person? Did I actually? It's sort of like, what was I thinking? I'm kidding, but I'm sure all our choices are. But really, the only choice that we have to make in all of that is constantly keep reminding ourselves of why we are here, what it is that we are doing. I was sharing recently with somebody. I found Yogananda right after I graduated college, but I've been living in Palo Alto. I moved to the Bay Area a couple of years after that. I've been living in the Palo Alto community for about 13 years now. And perhaps I did this even before, I don't quite remember now, but at least for the last 10, 12 years, I've never slept without the autobiography of a yogi next to me in my bedside. I'm not saying that everybody should do that. I'm just sharing a personal experience here. And, I have in the last many years, I've been serving Ananda, and it's a very busy life. It's just so confusing, and this and that class, this thing, this flyer, that website, and this and that. You get so busy. And I'm telling you, at least 5 out of 7 days a week, I don't go to bed until I read just one paragraph from the autobiography of a yogi. Of course, there's so many ways in which that book can be used, either to seek guidance. For me, it is simply an act of remembrance, because I don't want to forget. I don't want to get confused. Why am I here? What am I doing here? How did I end up here? Just like, one thing after another, I made a lot of choices in these last 12, 13 years. We have all made a lot of choices. And each one of those choices has brought us here in this room at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. And the choices we are making now is going to define what Sunday brings, what next week brings, what the rest of our life brings, and beyond that, what, if we have incarnations past this one, what that would bring. But all that I want to share here is find ways to remind yourself. Whatever that means to you, hold on to those treasures of experience. Put your wedding ring on the altar if you still have it. No. Whatever it is, that reminder, all those tiny little things, we want to find those opportunities. I get into my car in the morning, go to work. I have the picture of the 5 gurus. It's just like, don't just make it unconscious. When you see that picture, pause. Doesn't matter, half a second, pause. Remind yourself, why am I here? What am I doing? What is happening here? Oh, I'm seeking God, and I love Yogananda. If that is your story, it doesn't matter. You could have any reminder that is taking you in the direction of getting closer to God. For me personally, it's Yogananda and these 5 gurus. Just to remind yourself of that. Whatever it is, my phone, the wallpaper on my phone is Naya Swami Jyotish, who's the successor of Swami Kriyananda, who's like a spiritual teacher to me, to most of us at Ananda. Just to look at it every time I open my phone. Just those visual reminders. Constantly reminding ourselves, because in those occasions when we are not living to our own highest potential, if we are not being the perfect expressions of ourselves, we are just sobbing in the bathroom, those I'm kidding. That's what really helps. That's really what helps, because we need as many reminders as we can use. This is about going inside. What I'm looking for cannot be found here. This is not meant to be perfect. This never will be perfect. If this thing comes together, this other thing is going to fall apart. My house is saved, but my car is going to, just whatever it is. Everything is just such a delicate balance, and Divine Mother will sort of keep pushing us. Going back to Amol's question in the morning, we are all on the spiral to constantly expand our consciousness. And if we get too comfortable somewhere, as Asha says, there are 2 ways to go forward. You can either be inspired and drawn to run towards the goal, or you can have fire lit behind you. And when Divine Mother finds us to not be that inspired to move forward, she lights little fires and reminds us, why are we here? Why are we here? So many times in our temple, I'm sure perhaps true with this space, we have a very big and imposing temple just 2 blocks from Stanford University. You cannot miss it if you're driving by Palo Alto. It's just like you can see it from miles away. And so we have a lot of people who walk in who are curious, and oftentimes I've just had people walk in. I've done at least 2 astral ascension in the past. It's just like, I lost my son. I don't know. It's just like, this lady walked up to me and said, I felt like maybe there's something here. And I asked her, did you do, she said, I had a funeral service, but I don't know. I don't go to church. I don't necessarily relate to any of that. I just did it because there was nothing else to do. And then, we did a simple astral ascension the next afternoon for her. I'm not digressing. I'm sharing those things because sometimes life itself, even what might seem as suffering on the outside, the opportunities are given to us just for the sake of reminding us, this is not meant to be working out the way you imagine. It didn't work out for Jesus. It's not going to work out for us. And the third step is the choice. Once we remember what it is that we are doing here, the game is not over. We still have to choose. We still have to choose. I'm in a grumpy mood today. I'm going to be angry at my coworker. Oh, I see a picture of Master. That's remembrance. But now I still have the choice. What would he want me to do? I don't have this right now. I wear this often. A friend of mine from Assisi, Italy, he gave me one of those silicone bracelet thingies that you get in career fairs and promotional events. It was just this blue little thing, and it just had 2 phrases in Italian written on it. I think they made it. I don't know whether he made it or where he got it from. It just said in Italian, "Cosa farebbe il maestro, cosa farebbe Swamiji." What would Master do? What would Swamiji do now? And that's what he would wear all the time on his wrist. Just reminding ourselves of why we are here, but also what would he do? Would he write this email like this? Would Swamiji respond to an unkind coworker in this way? Would Swamiji be angry because something didn't go this particular way this time? And, oftentimes we feel like our problems are so complicated we don't know what to do, but it's just we don't ask. Sometimes if you just pause for a second and think, what would Swamiji do now? If he was in this situation. Believe me, oftentimes when I've asked that question, the answer is crystal clear. Yeah, this is what he would do. He would be kind, he would be loving, he would be serviceful, he would be devoted, he would be sincere. And it sounds easy, but that choice determines everything. And we are making those all the time. Like I was saying, it feels like we're picking the restaurant to go tonight, but really the only choice we are making is, are we moving one step closer to the light, or are we moving far away from it? And even if you think you're sitting still, that's what the Bhagavad Gita says. There's this complicated verse in the Gita that says, in action you find inaction, and in inaction you find action, and it just goes round and round. And what Krishna is trying to tell, even if you're just sitting still, you're making those choices. Right this moment, because your consciousness is always fluid, it's always moving, and your thoughts are never still. So you're always either moving towards the light or you're moving away from it. So you can never stop putting effort forward. You have to constantly choose the light. I'll share one other story coming to me right now. I forget who this person is. It might have been, there are 2 or 3 people in Ananda that passed away in the 80s that had terminal illnesses. And one of this, I think it was Happy who had AIDS. At one point, she asked Swamiji, what should I be praying for? Should I pray to live? Should I pray to die? Should I be here? Because she was, she was one of those first people that, because of an infected needle or something, she got HIV, and then she lived much longer than anybody imagined she would. But obviously, it was very challenging. It was not like she was able to necessarily do much, or it was often confusing. Would she be doing more good by simply leaving the body or sometimes being in the body? And Swami's response was very interesting. At one point he said, as long as you can make spiritual progress, you should be here. And when she asked, what should I pray for? And then he said, don't pray for anything. Pray just to be in the light. And I remembered that very distinctly, because even our prayers often, we get attached and confused about what it is that we want. There's a lot of stress on our intention, on our desire, rather than one of attunement. And whenever the answer or response is not, situation is not as clear to me, I just pray to be in the light, whether for ourselves or for others. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. At the end of the day, it sounds silly to say, but almost it doesn't matter whether you're in the body or not. What matters is whether you're in the light or not. Whether that choice, whenever it's happening, however it's happening, is it taking you closer to the light or it's not? And that choice is the free will that we were discussing this morning. That is the unique human gift that we all have, that dogs don't have. I know pet owners might be offended by this. I see a lot of dogs around in Texas. I know there's a lot more than California. But the truth is, human beings are special. As much as clever as horses and dogs and others might be, because the other animals, no other being, at least on this plane, on this planet, can objectify their existence. A dog does not reminisce about its puppy dog days, or the plight of street dogs in Guatemala. But we as humans do, because we have the ability to look at ourselves. We have the ability to watch what an instinct is, what our physical compulsions are, and then we also have the ability to choose. And it's a spectrum. It's not like we have absolute ability. That's self-mastery. That's where we are all headed. But we all have some amount of choice. And that choice is very powerful once you reach the human plane, because our ego is completely defined to be able to objectify itself, which none of the other animals can. And that is both a beautiful opportunity and a great responsibility, because that's when we start making these choices. That's when karma gets a whole other layer of meaning, which it doesn't in the case of animals or plants or all other living beings. As much as life force is flowing through them, they do not have that kind of ego identity to work with a complicated karmic tapestry, which we all do, whether through lifetimes after lifetimes or through our relationships, all the life situations that we go through. And that choice is everything. And finally, attunement. Once we have made that choice, it is still a process. It is not a one-time thing. It's constant, it is conscious, because at that point, the goal here, as Swami often would say towards the end of his life, I don't know where Swami Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins. Because when we train ourselves to make that choice, to always seek the light, at some point, it is no longer an uphill battle, let's just say. I'm going to assume most of us in this room, we are not, if a coworker is unkind to you, you're not putting all your energy into not murdering him. We might still have to put all our energy into not delivering that snarky remark when he comes to your cube. That's where we perhaps are. But still, it is a constant level of attunement, because at some point when we have made enough choices, when we have made enough of an effort to attune, then we don't have to discipline ourselves. When you see that coworker, you just think, oh, I wonder what happened to him. I wonder, maybe nobody was kind to him before. I don't know what life situations led him to be so rude and so complaining and angry all the time. Maybe I can be extra kind to him. It sounds so simple, and I'm giving a very simplistic example, but for all the different situations in our life, it's often not all that simple, or it's simple but not easy. So we are talking about Om, but really all of this is about turning inward. And the listening that we are talking about, tuning into the vibration, it's obviously, if it's not clear by everything I'm saying right now, it's not just a practice of meditation. It is, inner life is built on the foundation of a meditation practice. Let me just say this, at least as Yogananda and the teachers of this lineage taught, it is very, very hard to build a foundation for inner life without meditation practice. So if you don't have one, talk to Maitri, talk to Supriya, try to inspire. And if you have one, think and ask, how can I go deeper? How can I stay inspired in my meditation practice? How can I continue to grow? What will help me grow and keep my practice inspired? At the same time, all of this is constantly remembering what it is that we are doing, to always be willing and able to make those choices and constantly seek attunement, because that is what brings us closer to that vibration. There's this beautiful story, there's so many stories with the Om vibration, both from Swamiji's and Master's life. There's one story, of Dr. Lewis. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. Dr. Lewis, who was Yogananda's very first disciple in the US, he was sailing on the coast of New England. That's where he lived, and he was caught in a storm. And the boat was going to be rocked, and he was just going to drown. And he didn't know what to do. He just started thinking of Yogananda. He started visualizing the blue light, and he went into the Om vibration. He describes it that way in his accounts later on. And then when he got back home, as soon as he came home, the phone started to ring. And when he picked up the phone, it was Yogananda calling from Southern California. And the first words that Yogananda uttered were, "Oh, we almost got wet there, ain't doctor?" But the protection is always there. Divine Mother is always there to protect us, to comfort us. And the reason even that vibration is so close to all of us here in this room, not that we have any exclusive rights on Divine Mother, but it's because we have made sufficient effort, because we have developed enough awareness. We are sincerely trying. And the more we try, it's not just an instance here and there, but we start to live in that state of consciousness. Swami would tell story after story after story. It's no longer a miracle in your life, if it's just happening every other hour. As Thich Nhat Hanh would say, miracles are the way of life. And if you're not noticing them, then something has gone seriously wrong. And in all our lives, the more we start attuning to that, I'm talking about the inner sound, but really the inner reality, the inner life, that's what we are talking about. The more that protection just becomes a way of life. We just know we are just always in the company of that protecting grace. We are always being carried through life just the way we need to be. So I think we have, before we finish, why don't we, I wanted to chat a little bit more about the healing prayers. Maybe we will break with that. And then, as I was saying, those of us who have Om technique will stay with me in this room. We will just briefly talk about the practice a little bit more, and others will go with Supriya to the other room. Sorry, Maitri to the other room. So this practice, again, talking of Divine Mother and comfort and healing, we already did this once in our meditation right before our lunch break. But I wanted to share briefly a little bit more, just for 5-10 minutes. And I thought this will also be a nice opportunity before we separate, and we'll come back for our meditation towards the end of the evening, for us to pray for others also. I'm sure there are a lot of other people in all our lives that we know of who are in need, and perhaps we want some prayers for ourselves too. The Om vibration, I was explaining it briefly when we led that experience before lunch. It is a carrier, because we get so close to spirit. There is one of the quotes from Bharat's book. I don't remember it. I'm going to read it. I think it's from Swami Ramatirtha, who was a dear friend of Master also. Well, I have quite a few quotes here. I'm going to read a few of them because I'm just realizing I had enough time to share them. This is from Yogananda. When you utter the syllable Om, it travels not only all around the earth, but throughout all space and eternity. When you utter the syllable Om, it travels not only around all earth, but throughout space and eternity. We are just talking even about the chanting of Om. And from Swami Vivekananda, Om is not a word, Om is God Himself. And this was the quote I was looking for. From Swami Ramatirtha, we have a chant of Swami Ramatirtha that we often chant. Om is the point at which speech and thought stop, and soul is able to connect with divinity. Om is the point at which speech and thought stop, and soul is able to connect with divinity. Again, this is a practice. I think Supriya was just mentioning it about the right ear. I myself had, I should say, the unique fortune of, in the last few years, I'm saying fortune not because we all have a different perspective on the spiritual path, of course, of some of my dear friends at Ananda who have led a very beautiful life, leave their bodies, and being close to them during that time. And certainly one of them who had a pretty terminal condition. And I do remember, and it's a practice, I'm sure Supriya and others who have been around for very long have done this, have been through this quite a few times before. We always chant Om, because when somebody is about to leave their body, if they're close to it, it is said that sound is the last sense that leaves one's bodies. Even that's what it says in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if any of you know what that is. It's something that in the Tibetan culture they read. And even in that culture, they believe that a person can continue to hear even after they have left their body. And Master said it's not like they hear long after they leave, but it is the last sense that to actually leave the body. So we would take turns and we would chant Om in the right ear, sitting on the right side of that person. And I've noticed myself, how calm people get. It's not even like a couple of my friends that I was very close with in the last days. They were in and out a lot. They were not necessarily, obviously with the terminal condition in this country or in hospice or other such conditions where, you've been given enough medication and painkillers, you're not necessarily present to witness those moments, or at least the person themselves is sort of figuring it all out, going to the other side, coming back, deciding what they want to do. They may not, I don't know how they would express it in their words, but it's actually quite vivid to watch. In fact, one of my friends, I could actually see, many hours before she left the body, we could see that life force had left the lower part of her body. She was not present there. She was not aware, or she was not talking or communicating, but life force she was still breathing. There was still breath happening, very little bit. But we would chant Om or play Swami chanting Om in the right ear of the person. And it's not just something that Yogananda taught. It's actually a tradition in India also to chant Om, because that vibration has the power to lift. And it carries through all dimension. Om is that vibration that connects the causal, astral, and the physical. So when we actually chant Om, when we vocalize that sound, it builds that thread of connection with the subtler plane. It is that one sound that can make us feel connected with what's behind that sound. And interestingly, when it comes to music and chanting Om, Bharat again writes in that book, talking of the sound of Om itself, he talks about how sound is the only sense which you can receive and also reproduce. All other sense you can perceive and the brain can process the input. Sound is the only sense which you can also replicate. Especially for anybody who's a musician, you can hear a note. Generally, you train musically. It's not so much in the vocal cords. People think the musical talent resides here. But especially coming from a different tradition, I can tell you it resides here. Because you have to be able to hear a note or hear a microtone and be able to replicate it. The replication is not the hard part. The sensitivity to hear is often the more challenging part. That's why, keeping pitch is often hard if somebody is not a good musician. I'm sharing all of that because when we vocalize that Om sound through our own voice, through our own vocal instrument, then we are replicating something that is so much more subtler. And that same goes with actually music also. Even when we chant, when we sing, when we chant music that is uplifting to consciousness, like we did earlier in the morning, when we chants written by Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda, we are essentially tuning into that Om vibration, because we are able to not only tune into something that was already produced and created, but we are able to replicate and produce it through our own physical instrument. So coming back to healing prayer, again, this idea of, there's the story I'm sure all of you have read in the autobiography of Yogi of Kashi, the boy, and Master does not really give a lot of details. He says, I used secret yogic techniques. And what he did when Kashi was the boy, for those of you who don't remember the story, Kashi was about to die, and he approached Yogananda and asked him, Yogananda just blurted out one morning when it came out of bed, "You're going to die soon." And then Kashi said, "Oh my gosh." And then I'll give you the short version of the story. Kashi says, "Will you please find me when I'm reborn and bring me back to the spiritual path?" And Yogananda is sort of forced to say yes to him, so he agrees. And then Kashi actually dies. He contracts cholera or something like that, and he dies. And then he's about 8 or 9 years old. And then Yogananda is now looking for the reincarnated soul of Kashi. And then Yogananda describes, he, again, through some intuitive secret yogic power, he discovers which physical geographical area that the soul might incarnate in. And then he walks around the streets of Kolkata holding his hands like this, because he says the hands are the magnet, or the antenna. That's what he says. They are the antenna to send and receive signal. So he walks around the streets like this. He says sending signal, and he would turn in the direction where he was receiving the signal. And after many days of walking like this, he's able to receive the signal back from Kashi. He was sending out his frequency over to Kashi's soul, and finally he receives the response from Kashi. And then he starts, like, what is that game where is it Marco Polo or? Yeah. Anyway, that's probably what he was doing. He was probably testing the strength of the signal and walking towards where Kashi was, and then he meets his parents, and then he describes the physical features of the son that will be born, and then the parents agree to give the child as soon as he is a year old to Yogananda, and he becomes a renunciative at a very young age, Kashi, the reborn Kashi. But again, I'm sharing that story because the hands are very, very powerful. That's why in India, generally, you don't even shake hands because there's a lot of subtle magnetic exchange. There's nothing wrong in shaking hands. The reason you don't do it is because it's not about who has positive magnetism, but it's about who has greater magnetism. So if you're shaking hands with somebody who has a lot of negative magnetism, it can actually drain. Swami himself talks about his experience doing that. So our palms are very powerful. In Indian mythology and iconography, you would see a lot of deities are blessing with their palm. They would hold palms like this because that's the station through which that signal comes out. And when we send healing prayers, again, the Reiki and other techniques too that use a similar principle, the way Yogananda taught us to do it is to always focus here, and the hands are an extension of the heart. We are tuning into the Om vibration at this point because it is not through our power that we are healing. We are asking to be channels. We are allowing ourselves to be instruments for the Om vibration, for the Divine Mother's healing presence to flow through us. And we are going to draw it out of our heart. And we use our hands as that antenna to send that healing energy out to that person. Before we try that together, let's try this simple exercise, which I'm sure some of you may have done before. We are going to rub our palms just to feel, that energy that builds up. And when you rub it like this, and then rather than lifting your hands, let's try to sort of, as if you're holding a ball that's sort of balloon, rather, growing and shrinking in size. You should be able to feel sort of an energetic field that is building between your palm, and at some point you can feel that almost as an orb of energy that you can hold, like a real physical mass of energy that you can hold in that space. And that is, you can bring your palms back into position. The reason we do that is because this act of rubbing is magnetizing the arms, but bringing all our awareness, and it's stimulating the palms in our body. It's stimulating to draw energy. All the energy from the heart now comes and pools in our palm. And then that Om vibration itself, it's the carrier. Because again, that healing is not coming because so-and-so prayed. The so-and-so was able to step aside and be an instrument for Divine Mother's energy to flow through them. And it's always important for us to remember that when we offer healing prayers. And again, more than praying for others, I'll tell you from my own experience, when people pray for you, you really feel it. I've had a couple of instances in my life where people have prayed for me, and just for no logical reason, I would be in such an uplifted state of consciousness. And I've had the same experience reiterated to me by other devotees also, which have really, really helped me appreciate the power of healing prayers. The healing prayer, Yogananda taught us to pray for the person to be surrounded in Divine Mother's healing light and presence. We generally don't pray. We are praying for healing, but we don't know what healing we are praying for. We don't know if the cancer is supposed to disappear or the cancer is supposed to grow. You know, it sounds, again, I'm speaking to a close group of friends who have, the maturity to understand this. We don't quite know what is part of God's plan for a given soul. It may be very hard for us to hear at times. That's a very extreme example. Divine Mother is not intentionally wanting anyone to suffer, but she's also wanting everybody to spiritually grow and expand into their own next step. And we don't quite know what it's going to look like. Oftentimes, the human mind can be attached to outcomes, to exactly the way we want things to be, or our notion of what is good, what is not good. All of that is so colored by what our ego holds. So all that we pray for, even when we visualize and pray for somebody, we want to see that person surrounded in light. To see them happy and joyful is a perfectly fine affirmation. We don't know what else is part of Divine Mother's plan for them. You know, it's very hard. I've had family members who have left their body, and it would be very I've had conversations with other family members talking about, do you think that person staying in the body is necessarily the best outcome? Is there any chance that this person who's really, really suffering in that body, it could actually not be a bad thing for them to move on? And sometimes when people don't have that spiritual perspective, it's very hard for them to hear that. That somehow there could be some good in somebody leaving their body, or somehow it could be something that is worth appreciating or celebrating. I'll share this one piece because it's sort of part of my own spiritual journey and growth. I was talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's this documentary that's pretty old, you can find on YouTube. I saw this documentary when I just graduated high school. It shifted my whole life. It sort of put me on a quest. Eventually, I ended up here. But there's a line in that documentary where the narrator just sort of narrates in this very grave, serious voice, calm, soft narration of what the process of death is, what the book says. And then at one point he says, every time you leave the body, you have an opportunity to be free completely. And every time you return back to this plane, it's because you were not successful the last time. And yet, people celebrate birth as something auspicious, happy, and they mourn death. Again, it's a little bit tangential, but I'm sharing that because what we are tuning into by channeling healing prayers is tuning into God's plan. It's tuning into the light and to hold that promise of freedom and joy for each one of us, for the person that is blessing, the person that is being blessed. Yogananda, one of his famous quotes is, the channel is blessed by that which is flowing through it. So, before we move on to our next activity, let's once again take this opportunity to offer healing prayers. Let's just take a moment of pause, just holding some of the thoughts we discussed in our minds. Let's take a moment to calm our minds, calm our breath. Just a brief meditation to gather all our energy at the spiritual eye. We will take about 5 minutes to do this activity. I invite all of you, if you feel to say aloud the name of the person that you wish to pray for, that you wish to send healing energy to. This is a very powerful satsang group that we are in, spending this whole day tuning into the power of the Om vibration. Jyotish, Devi, Arvind, Rama, Sugandhi, Robin, Gino, Barry. Also holding at our spiritual eye anyone who's on healing prayer lists everywhere around the world at Ananda. People living in war-torn countries. All those that are suffering in various ways due to poverty, physical ailments. Holding all these souls, seeing them surrounded in Divine Mother's healing light. And again, consciously inviting the presence of Divine Mother, asking for ourselves to be blessed as channels for this healing light. Let us pray together. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all Thy children. Thou art in these souls. Manifest Thy healing presence in these bodies, minds, and souls. Rubbing our palms together, magnetizing them, gathering the energy of the heart. So, now we will separate just for about half hour. Those of you that have not yet learned the Om technique, Maitri will take you to the other room to do some gentle yoga, stretching. And the rest of us, if you can get your own boards, we are not going to practice yet, but we are going to discuss the technique a little bit and answer any questions or talk about it just briefly for the next half hour or so. So it'll be helpful if you have your own board. If not, don't worry about it. Sure. Oh, there's a queue there. That's fine. We'll give a couple of more minutes.
Oh, I wonder if they're not using the back bathroom because maybe my entries are there.
That's why I go with the kids. I was about to say with the kids. With the kids.
You used to do the kids.
Well, we can get started while, this is just very casual. Does anybody, I want to share a few things, but does anyone have any questions? I'm not going to ask how many of you practice how frequently. I'm going to refrain from doing that. But other than that, how, especially because I think most of you are Kriyabans, I'm assuming also. Because once you take Kriya, then obviously there's more interesting things to do again, and Om technique can take a backseat also. That's why I was making that reference.
I blamed it on that for some years until I readjusted.
Yeah, so does anyone have questions or thoughts or anything that they want to share or ask?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing because it's my least favorite thing to do.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
and Patrick's way more,
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Discipline with
Yeah,
it.
discipline.
Yeah.
Encouraging you to do
Yeah,
it.
and I'm like, okay, he's doing it, and he has bad shoulders. I can do it. My back hurts a lot. I just have a weak
Yeah.
posture. Always have. I have joke all the time. I'm a dentist, so like I really have pain on my shoulders. So doing this, I'm more so like I can focus for a few minutes maybe, and then I'm like, okay, this hurts. Oh, I'm uncomfortable. How much
Yeah.
should I do this? Like, oh, let me go on. You know?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what? Obviously would love to learn.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you started the conversation because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. The first thing I will start by saying is there's no right or wrong. It's a very powerful and effective technique. But more importantly than that, in the path of Kriya, there are 4 pillars, and they all complement each other. It's almost like the path is held by all 4 of them together. We start with Hongsa. Master said Hongsa is the technique of concentration. He never called it meditation, interestingly. He called it the Hongsa technique of concentration. And then there's the energization exercise. Then there's Om, and then there's Kriya technique itself, the Kriya breath and the Kriya technique that you learn during initiation. The Hongsa technique, Master said, it's both the initial technique. He spoke a lot about that also. He said you can go to Samadhi with Hongsa, and he in fact recommended, I think at one of his lessons, he recommended doing Hongsa 3 hours a day, at least once a week, which I confess I have not tried yet. Hongsa, he said, is you get the first experience of peace in meditation. Hongsa is a technique where we tune into God's presence as peace. Energization, obviously energy. Kriya, we tune into joy. That's how he described it. The experience of God that Kriya technique gives is one of bliss and joy. And Om technique, again, obviously, we are tuned into God as vibration. Now, the Om technique has a very particular place in this whole system because if you think about it, the Om technique is one where your willpower is least engaged in an external way. In Hongsa, you're not controlling anything, but still there is a conscious disciplining and bringing back of the mind to the mantra. In energization, you're using energization, Kriya go hand in hand almost in the way we use willpower. In energization, we use willpower to control energy through the physical muscles, and that's training us to do Kriya. And because in Kriya, you're going to use the same willpower to control the flow of energy, but there is no physical movement. So the more we do energization and the deeper we go with it, the better we are able to practice Kriya, because ultimately what we are doing in energization is using our willpower to direct energy, which is what we are doing in Kriya also. It's a little more subtler in Kriya because it's a meditation technique and you don't move, whereas it's easier to tune into with energization practice. Now, Om technique is a very unique, and first of all, I want to also say the Om technique is not, if you didn't know this, it's not specific to the path of Kriya Yoga. It's not something that's specific to this lineage. It is something you see these things used even in Indian mythology. The mudra is not something our gurus gave. And you might wonder then, why are we splitting the room? Why don't we share Om technique with everyone? In fact, not all of Yogananda's organizations and disciples share Om technique just with disciples. Many of them, they are taught before the discipleship vow. Even Self-Realization Fellowship, you can learn Om technique without needing to take any vows. The reason why Swami did it the way that we are doing, Swami always did things the way Master did, but also Master sort of went back and forth and did many things. Swami codified it for us on what he felt was best in tune with how Master taught. The reason in Ananda we learn and teach Om technique only after discipleship is because of the simple reason, which is, if you don't have a guru, who are you listening to? What are you attuning to if you don't have a guru? So it is not a confidential technique in any way, but it's almost an ineffective technique without discipleship. Because ultimately what you're tuning into, the vibration is being revealed by the guru, and it is through the guru that you actually access the Om vibration. Now, coming back to where I was with the 4 techniques, Om is purely an act of listening. there is still concentration, there's still some amount of willpower involved. But of all the different techniques on the path of Kriya, it is the least doing technique, almost, right after Hongsa. Right before Hongsa. Anyway. So in that sense, the Om technique can actually be very relaxing. And also, Om technique is, as Bharat talks about it in many times in his classes on Om, it is a very, very calming technique. When you actually start developing a taste for it, it can be quite inviting. And I know for a lot of us, it is almost one of those stepchildren that don't get enough attention, and you're always trying. You're supposed to do Kriya every day, and Hongsa is already part of routine. It's something directly built into us from the beginning, and energization we get to also somehow squeeze into everyday schedule. With Om, as soon as you start doing a lot of other things, it can tend to fall by the wayside. Now, I'm going to directly address what Shraddha was asking, because that, in essence, is often why Om can sometimes be unappealing. First of all, you have to carry the board, set up the board, but also many people find the posture and the mudra uncomfortable. Now, we can talk later on if we have time after the class too, but from my little experience and also from what I've heard from others, the Om technique, if you think about it in theory and just anatomy, you're not even putting energy into holding your spine. You're putting a lot of weight through your elbows on the board. So in a sense, even while you're sitting straight, it takes less effort than sitting in meditation without the board. If we were to get into the habit and really understand our anatomy and how the board works and get in tune with it, you will realize, again, everybody's body is different. I don't want to claim knowledge of exactly the physiology of it, but it is actually, if you think about it, in some ways easier to hold than even sitting straight. And that's actually intentional, because not just for the mudra, but it's a very relaxing technique. Bharat talks about how, I don't remember how he exactly put it, not in the book. I have some video lectures of him talking about Om. This act of putting the 3 fingers on your forehead in itself is said to be very calming and relaxing, that mudra. And added to it, this act of putting weight on the board helps you relax the spine. Now, then why is it that we are often challenged? Why do some of us find the board uncomfortable? And one of the things to watch out for, the first one, is try to use, especially if you are consistently challenged, I would recommend also trying a different kind of board. I travel, this is my wife's board, but I actually use the one with the metal thing. I like that. I find that to be more stable, and for some reason there's one in the back I can see. Yeah, I like that one. And I love the one with the padding.
Yeah. But they don't make them anymore.
I know, they don't make them anymore. No, you can. No, you can. There are a few collectible ones you can find online with the metal one. They don't make them with the pillow anymore. But if you are a reasonably handy person, or if you want to watch some YouTube videos, it's not that hard to do. If you just want to get some foam and get a staple gun to put a cloth on top of it, it's not as complicated as it looks.
Okay, that's all it is staples. Yeah.
That's exactly all that it is. It's just a staple gun and a piece of fabric and some foam. It's not. As far as I know, they're not manufacturing it anymore, so this might be a secret to be kept in the room. But there are some online websites where you can still find that metal board one. I do prefer that one for what it's worth. Some people really swear by the plastic one. They're bad news. They're not manufacturing those anymore either. They are not my favorite either. I just could never tune. I like the heavier feel of the wooden ones. I think that one is heavier than this. That's why I like it. And this is heavier than the plastic one, so I do like this one too. So what I was about to say is, even sometimes a 1/4 inch height difference in the board, it might sound like, oh, this seems more or less right. Try holding the posture for about 30 seconds when you adjust the board. And then you will see, especially if Om technique is the only technique you're doing, and if you're just meditating at home, you're not adjusting the board every day. It's just adjusted already for you. So take some time to play with the board. Oftentimes, even a 1/4 inch height difference actually aligns your spine differently. And it's most often just that. If you were to think about it, your spine wants to be elongated to its maximum height, and your shoulders need to be like you're carrying a weight. They need to be fully dropped. Your shoulders don't want to be lifted. That's not a comfortable position. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, well, both of us learned it from online with SRF, so we've never actually had anyone share.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we are just studying.
Well, if you have a few minutes after 5 p.m., we can just review that.
An Om technique class?
No, you asked us if we'd done it, and I explained it to you that we did on the online with SRF all their lessons. So
yeah.
They taught us how to do it, but they never actually.
I also got everything from SRF lessons. The energization, when I learned it, this was what year? This must have been, I was like 21. This must have been, I don't know, a long time ago, 2008, 2009. I got the energization booklet, and all there were stick figures. There were no human person there. And so I'm like, there's a leg like this, and there's an arrow. Maybe it's this, maybe it's this. I had never seen anybody. I didn't even I mean, I'm sure it was on YouTube by that point, but it never occurred to me to look at it. But when I came to Ananda and I saw people doing energization, I'm like, whoa, that's what it's supposed to be like? I don't know what I was doing all this time. Anyway, I'm glad you have real people who can tell you. But yes, the length of the board is everything. Do not underestimate the importance of fine-tuning the height of the board, as I said, even to 1/4 inch. As long as your shoulders relaxed and your back is comfortably settled, if you can sit in meditation comfortably, using an Om board is only easier, not harder. If you're someone who needs a lot of back support for meditation, that's a different story. Then Om board can put strain because you cannot use back support while using Om board. But if you can sit without a lot of back support, and even I always tell people, even with their back issues and such, find light down or foam, light things when you sit on a chair. Just pad yourself in the back, but not allowing yourself to take the shape of the chair, but just getting enough support. So with that said, just a few basics, you may have heard all of this when you learned Om, but I'm just going to mention a few things, both to re-inspire your practice, to review, but also things to hold in your mind because you may have forgotten if you learned it many years ago. All the parts of the mudra are, they have a metaphysical significance. I'm not going to try to explain all of it because I don't know why, the rationale behind those things. But there is, the way it is described, the tragus itself is a very energetically sensitive point. And it's almost like it's part of the human design. It's just like there's this tiny little flap out of cartilage outside the ear. Why? It's for you to do Om technique. I mean, that was...
That's a good excuse.
It really is because, a lot of the yogic mudras work with certain energies. All the master even writes about the energies in the different fingertips. So they're all very particular. People would often ask, even with Jyoti Mudra, which is a technique that is taught along with Kriya Yoga, it's another mudra that we do. People would often ask, I don't like to take my headphones off. Can I put my thumb on top of headphones? I'm sorry, no. You just got to take the headphone off even if you feel you're disturbing your meditation, because the essential part of the mudra is this point which has a particular energy coming into contact. It's the closing of a circuit. And that is part of the mudra. What it does, this action in itself turns, energetically, it is turning the hearing sense inward. Every sense, on the outside, you have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears. You don't have 2 tongues, but actually you have 2 directions to the tongues. All of this are the senses of duality. And they're symbolic. Why do you need 2 ears? You think about it, the brain has a whole mechanism to make us feel like we're looking at one visual when they're actually coming from 2 different inputs. Because the dual sense of vision is interacting with duality. The singular eye has the one vision. It does not resolve the dual. Same with the ears. We have 2 ears, which we... Yes?
Sorry, I need to
Say that again?
It's also about the nervous system.
The mudra or?
No, I mean the position.
About the nervous system? I'm sure it is. Yeah, the nerve endings, you mean? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the energy that flows through your physical body. But ultimately, we are talking about nadis and things that are not necessarily of the physical body also. But yes, there is, I'm sure, physical correspondence to all of what the mudras represent. And the tugging, when you close the eye, there's another common thing that I have heard from people and also from experience, and perhaps this will inspire you also, and maybe will give you other experiences, is many people talk about how they can see the spiritual eye or light when they do the Om technique. If you think about it, the spiritual eye and the Om vibration are just two aspects of the same aspect of who we are. They're just two parts of it. And Om is the sound of the spiritual eye. The visual representation of it is that light, the golden circle and the blue orb and all of that. And this, often, when you tug on your eyelids like this, again, it directs energy away from the dual vision. That's similar to what we do in the Jyoti Mudra also. We just use a different finger. But it's similar to directing the senses inward. So the Om technique, both the Om Mudra, the Jyoti Mudra is slightly different, which we do as part of Kriya. But both of them, the Mudra turns our senses inward. It energetically reverses the direction in which life force is flowing to the senses. And the most important part, which I already talked about when we did that brief meditation before lunch, is when you're chanting Om here, people often ask how many I'm chanting, 3. It's just, it's really up to you. It's not, there's no, Master said different things at different point, and I think a lot of this was also just offered by Swami. And also Swami at one point said he just offered this as a guideline or ways in which people can do, offering structure for people. If that the Om chanting may or may not be part of the technique, depending upon what you're hearing and what you're not hearing. It is not necessarily exactly done in this way or not that way or this particular thing or that. What is important is the mudra and the act of listening and constantly attuning to the Om. We don't watch the breath. We sort of let go of everything and we are in the state of acute listening. And that really is the summary of the technique, acute listening. Intense, curious, engaged, with an active sense of curiosity. Master used to use the word, when he taught Hongsa, he would say, be a breath scientist. And what he meant was, you want to be so interested in observing your breath. What is it doing now? What is it flowing without controlling it? Just watching with a lot of curiosity and interest. The same thing with Om technique. We are listening with a lot of curiosity, interest. And often it is not that hard if one is able to still themselves, gather their attention to at least hear a buzz. The buzz that one often hears when they start doing the Om technique is just the sound of the flow of energy in the astral spine. Whether you hear bumblebees, whether you hear harps, I'm not going to go through the whole list. It doesn't really matter. All of it is beautiful. Om technique is one of those interesting techniques where you'll have phases over the years. Some for many weeks you're just hearing this buzz. Suddenly you're starting to hear bumblebees or flow of water for a few months, and then suddenly you're hearing nothing. And then suddenly you hear something else. Swami, what did he say about the Om technique? I think he started, it's a slow start, but a great finisher. And that's really what the Om technique is. It requires a lot of persistence. And we cannot listen until we can relax. That's the other part with the Om technique. When you actually get into the mudra, because we are not... So when we are actually trying to listen, we also want to fully surrender and relax. Just as if you're in the lap of Divine Mother. That's why that physical relaxation is also an important part of it, how we keep our shoulders, how we keep our hands, and just getting comfortable with the mudra. The last part I'll talk about before we can have any other questions if you need answered is this. That's another very common question that people ask. Can I just do it with this? Can I not do it with this? And I asked this question to Bharat. He said, you always want to start here. unless you're traveling, you can't find the Om board. There are always situations where you can make exceptions. But as a general rule, do not let go of the board, because of the main reason is it is actually deeply relaxing. When you learn to do it the right way, and when you get into the mudra, and when you're able to practice it with that sense of surrender, it is actually a very relaxing technique, which you don't feel when you're not using the board. Obviously, doing the mudra without the board is not relaxing. I've tried that many times when I don't have the board. I can do it for 2 or 3 minutes at the most. It's just stressful on your shoulders and your spine. So you do want the board. And he did add by saying, if you do not prefer the board, and if it's really, even after trying everything you're trying, if it is still not comfortable or relaxing for you, do it for 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever you can. And then don't think you have to stop the practice of the Om technique. You can continue listening to the Om without headphones if that works for you. But again, I would also highly recommend this. This is not a noise cancelling. This is one of those shooting range headphones. I would recommend this one also. I'm sure you have more of these in Texas than in California. But this one, actually, the one I have is the maximum decibel rating you can find. I think this is 39 decibels. So you can look up on Amazon what the maximum decibel rating is that you can find, or I can tell you what this is called. It's called Decibel Defense. Anyway, I find this very helpful also. So if you're not a fan of doing the board for a longer period of time, you can certainly do 5 to 7 minutes, and don't think you have to stop the practice of Om just for that period. You can continue that act of listening, tuning into that sound while wearing the headphones. You will, from my experience, you generally don't lose the sound. The mudra helps get into that zone, get into that vibration, but then you can continue tuning into it through the headphones also. Yes, Karen.
I'm curious, I haven't seen people use headphones like that. What is the purpose of that?
It sort of seals external sounds, and it creates a vacuum around your ear, not a real vacuum, but just a sound vacuum. And I don't know the scientific explanation for how else it works, but yes, I can hear the inner sounds much more vividly when I wear them.
You don't have it hooked up to anything, it's just...
No, yeah, this is a shooting range headphone, not a noise cancelling headphone. Noise cancelling headphones are also helpful. I don't use them.
That was going to be my question. I have noise. Is the electronics of the noise cancelling, is that an issue?
No, I like these because these are actually not touching the ear. These are around your ear, not because of the technology or the lack of it. But it's a personal preference. Like, for example, I find those earbuds a little uncomfortable after 10-15 minutes. Yeah. And the noise cancelling, it sits on the ear. And I don't enjoy that. Maybe there are noise cancellings that are like this. I like the padding. See, this one when I wear, it's around my ear. There's a huge hole here into which my ear goes. So my ear is very relaxed. It's not touching or squishing my ear. That's all.
What brand is that?
This one is called Decibel Defense. I mean, I bought this, I've had this 5 years or 6 years at least. Maybe there's a better one now. If I'm remembering it right, this is 39 decibels. I've tried 30, 35, 36. It actually makes a difference. The higher the decibel cancelling it is. And, I have a feeling Master would encourage and support all these devices. Do you know what the Temple of Silence is? Do any of you know what the Temple of Silence is? It was an apparatus that Yogananda created. No? Do you know, Supriya?
I don't understand. The physical temple of silence?
No, Master created and sold something called the Temple of Silence.
Oh, no, I don't.
It was an earbud that went into the ear. Bear with me here, it's quite funny. And then it went above your head, like this, like a bow on top of your head. It was a metal thing. And then there was a rod that came straight out of that. And then it had a dangling 5-pointed star right here in front of you. I don't think so. I doubt if any of them exist. I don't know if he even sold it. He created it.
Never heard of that. That's great.
Believe me, he has a lot more technology to work with in 2023 than what he had in 1924.
I might like to try that because my Walgreens earplugs are 22 dB.
Yeah.
They're after max.
Yeah.
But my question was, I find that after a while, I go through, like you say, a 5 or 7 minute, and then I'll just put the hands down a while and continue to listen and then come back up.
Yeah, I guess you were really enjoying the board and just the support, which is also great.
And also, that was my other thing I wanted to mention, is that I learned at yoga teacher training at Ananda Village that a cure for depression is, pardon the expression, but it's open armpits. So I've always felt like this is a good thing to be doing. And also I do a yoga posture like that on my back.
Yeah, there's more to it, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just even the 3 fingers that I was sharing that I heard from Bharat, that this is somehow very calming to the brain when you put your 3 fingers like this. Yeah, so I'm sure there's a lot more science to it, which we'll even discover as decades pass. It doesn't even matter. I mean, these are techniques where we really don't question what Master taught would create with own technique and such. There's no creativity here. It's just some things. There might be a scientific explanation. There may not be. We just do it the way Guru taught. Yes, you.
What's that brand again?
It's called Decibel Defense. Like I said, this is from 6 years ago. There might even be better ones on Amazon that you can find now.
Can you show the mudra, please?
Yes. So the mudra is basically closing your tragus with your thumb, pulling on your eyelids with your pinky. You don't put your pinky on top of the balls because it's not good for your retina. And your 3 fingers on your forehead like this. So, yes.
I have to ask about the pinky because as I was taught it and to teach it, and I saw in the book, and I'm sure there are different ways we were taught on the...
To pull?
No pulling. That's it. To rest it on the corner of the eye. Yes, helping to keep the eyelid closed, never on the pupil, on the eyeball itself, but on the corner. So that's why I need to ask, because I'm hearing something different. And then, of course, the other...
You know, I'll also check on it. Well, I've heard that too. I've heard it both ways. I think... to me, it feels like it might also depend on the hand and how exactly you're comfortable, but I think I'll check on it and I'll also get back to you.
We'll
You can
look at the book when we get home.
Yeah.
I have the prep book, or look at what you want to look at. And then
Yeah. But either way, I think the common thing that we are saying is whether you put it on the side of the eye or on the eyelid or however you want to put it, certainly not on the eyes, no pressing, not here in the corner of the eye. Oftentimes, even, this is true with Jyoti Mudra also, oftentimes people like a gentle pressure and they do these things because it also simulates, retinal images, which is different from spiritual eye. But but it's not good for your eyes, quite apart from everything else. So no pressure on the eyes whatsoever. We just sort of gently are placing our pinky outside the eye.
And you have your 3 fingers on your forehead, because I think we learned that it goes back here, like your forehead. But like right here. That's how I thought it was. Clearly I'm wrong, but I'm just curious. It has to be.
This is how I've learned it, and I teach it this way. Is like this, 3 fingers on the forehead like this.
Do you ever get noise?
Huh?
Not sealing it correctly?
Say it again.
Do you ever get like screeching, like noise, like there's a leak when you don't plug it correctly?
Like
it just goes, and I'll move it and it still does it. And like I spend most of my time then listening to this annoying noise. So I'm just curious, am I just plugging it wrong?
Maybe you have ear pressure because of a lot of flying.
Just an airhead.
The closing of the tragus is actually not as noise cancelling. It is more an energetic mudra. It doesn't really shield noise because,
Yeah, check the pressure with how hard you are pushing. And
Yeah.
I say that from my beginning days experience. I was pushing so hard to close the whole of the ear, they would get on fire.
Yeah, actually that's probably what you're saying
And
too.
I was told I had to.
Yeah, it's actually more a closing of a circuit. It is not that you're shoving the tragus into the ear hole to actually shut it. Because, yeah, I can see what you're saying. It actually presses and it creates a zing. As far as I know, that's you're creating a vacuum in your eardrum. That's what you're doing. I don't think you need to go that far. Yeah, no. It's more just the touching of your thumb and your tragus and gently pushing it towards the ear hole. You don't have to stuff it inside your ear hole.
Yeah, that's what we were doing.
That's the answer. Thank you.
I can't believe it.
It was during COVID though, so we couldn't get together.
Yeah, but we've done things online during COVID. I can't believe you guys.
But look at us learn now.
There you go. You're on the right day at the right time.
Perfect.
Do some people squint their eyes too when they do it?
You know, I've seen people do that, but I haven't heard any teacher teach that. I think it's helpful to not do that because, you know, sometimes people squint when they concentrate. But, you know, I remember one talk of Swami on Om technique where he was talking about the finger pulling and all of that. He talked about how, you know, when you go into a state of samadhi or when you're going into higher consciousness, you develop wide peripheral vision. Squinting is more like looking at something very close, but when you're looking actually at the spiritual eye, it's like you're looking into infinity. You're not looking like 1 feet in front of you. So unless you feel naturally drawn or somehow really guided to do that, I would try and keep your forehead and eyes relaxed. But to answer your question, I have seen a lot of people do that. I don't, you know, I wouldn't know better except maybe it's working for them or there's a reason they do it. But from what I understand, I personally wouldn't want to squint too much or create that intensity.
Yeah, we wouldn't teach it like that. And who knows, maybe they're doing Jyoti Mudra that way, maybe they're doing one of the higher Kriyas.
Sorry, yeah, so, but
I'm just saying it could be other times in their
yeah, it does
meditation.
apply to that, that's kind of probably what I was thinking.
Well,
yeah.
I think I've seen in a review of Hare Kriya that the Jyoti Mudra that Jyotish squinted during the Jyoti Mudra.
Yeah, actually Jyoti Mudra is a little different because there you are very powerfully directing all of the energy to the spiritual eye. Whereas in Om technique, with your gaze here, you're just doing what you do in Hongsa, which is just gazing at a distance, looking up. Whereas in Jyoti Mudra, it is a little more intense. Now that you say it, yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
Does the color of the headphones matter?
You're welcome to experiment and report back.
I like the orange.
Yeah, I think the only options are white and orange and black or something, and I didn't want white, I didn't want black. Or my wife bought white and we didn't want to buy the same color.
You don't get confused.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just want to bring up also the shoulders, because you did say I heard you say, and I love the way you said it, it's almost as if you're
Lifting weights.
holding, to get the shoulders down and relaxed.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Yeah.
And I just think everybody.
Yeah, in fact, let's try this since most of you have your own boards. Don't put your hands on the own board. Put your hands down as if you're lifting a weight, like you're lifting a heavy suitcase. You're holding it in your heads. Now make a mental note of where your shoulder, and your spine is elongated. Your spine is not slouching, and your chest is lifted up. You're sitting upright, but you're carrying very heavy weights. Now I want you to gently take this hand and put it on the Om board, and your shoulder will shape shift. It's not going to be exactly the same, but I want you to keep the same sense of relaxation and the same positioning of the shoulder blade if possible. Does that make sense? Does that help?
And experiment.
And experiment with it. As I was saying, even when you adjust the height by 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, do the mudra in that position for about 30 seconds. Shraddha, I can tell you, even from looking, it's a little too short for your height.
Okay, I just lowered it. So
Yeah.
It was probably better.
Yeah, I mean, somebody else can also see it more easily than you oftentimes. Yeah, how does that feel?
I mean, your head's supposed to be more straight. I feel like I'm leaning into it still.
Yeah, then draw the closer. Yeah, we can talk later too. Then draw the board closer to your chest, because if the board, maybe you are leaning towards the board, Now, if you feel like you need to be closer, rather than you leaning, lean the board towards you, and you can move the base of the board also. And then the height will change when you do that. So that's why it requires some finesse and just playing with it to see what works.
It may be worth taking 1 minute right now just to address this.
Yeah.
Because some people do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, or even this, however you want.
Yes.
Oh, and the gooseneck. The gooseneck is also, that's what you're referring to. No goosenecks, because oftentimes what we can do is we would put the board here, put this, and like,
There it went.
it's very bad for your neck. Not your neck also needs to be part of your spine. There is no tilting forward, leaning forward of the neck. These are not things that you might feel in 1 day or two, but if you continue doing, you'll have severe pain. So, your neck coming forward in order to do the mudra, because your hands are way too forward, like you're basically your cervical joint is going like this rather than being here.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, please.
Dear the teacher.
Yes.
This was always.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, watch this for just a moment. The chin is almost as if it. Can you see that very slight movement? It doesn't go up. It doesn't go down. It glides toward the back of my throat. And when that happens, it elongates these little in your neck, the cervical, this vertebrae.
Yeah.
And that's important. And then, of course, you relax.
Yeah, actually, that's very helpful. You can feel it in the back of the neck. When you just place your neck and your chin parallel, your chin just set into your face. Yeah.
Boy, Masters really makes it known to me as soon as I'm like this. Because there's a little pain, and it will say, remember? And I go, whoop, there it is.
Yeah.
Your chin should be parallel to the floor.
Look.
The chin is always parallel to the floor in all techniques. In this case, it's not only parallel, it is also just set in with your spine, cervical spine elongated and straight and not leaning forward. It's not something that we tend to do with other techniques, but with the board, we can tend to lean forward. There's a tendency or temptation to do that. So we are at 4:25. What shall we do? I am inclined, although we have only 35 minutes, I think I can see it is very hot outside. I'm going to vote. Did you do some yoga, Maitri?
Yeah.
What do you think of energizing and meditating briefly, or what do you think? What does anybody else? What does anybody else think of?
That was what the plan was.
Yeah, we'll have a briefer meditation, but that's okay. I think it's nice to energize. We have had a long day, and it's good to just practice that also together. So I can see, although I cannot feel it, that it's very hot outside.
Yes,
It's very hot. I don't want to see outside.
So should we do it here, or what do you think?
Well, people have to spread out.
Huh?
People love to spread out.
You can come closer too. You can come to the sides. I know some of you may not have learned energization. We'll guide the exercises. Everybody else will be doing, so you'll be able to follow it along.